good time. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be distributing the survey form for you to fill in. This is, of course, for quality improvement purposes. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning we will start the second session of the conference with a forum on cross-border experience. We will have 4 eminent speakers in this forum representing Malaysia, Singapore, Myanmar, and Cambodia. And they will be deliberating on the topic opportunities and challenges of professional service providers giving the countries a scenario respectively. I believe it is going to be another interesting, not sure about hot, but interesting session. Before we begin, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce the chairman of the session. Our chairman this morning is none other than our past chairman of IEM Southern Branch, Major Dato Engineer Ng Ah Kau, who actually basically needs no introduction. But if there is one thing that I must say about Dato Engineer Ng Ah Kau, is his utmost dedication to IEM Southern Branch and his role in the organization of this conference. I would like everyone to know that Dato Engineer Ng Ah Kau's advice, his fantastic networking, his wisdom, and his support throughout the conference organization is beyond words that I can express. Dato Engineer Ng was there with us during the most difficult and most challenging time in organizing this conference. And I must say there were plenty of challenging times. And he even stayed back with us way past midnight, ensuring everything was in order on many days before the conference. For that, Dato Engineer Ng, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. Having said that, may I now call upon Dato Engineer Ng Ah Kau to take the stage. Please welcome Dato Ng.
Thank you very much, Associate Professor Engineer Hayati, for your kind introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm indeed very honored to be given the task to moderate this morning's forum session. We have come to the final day of our conference. It's indeed very nice to see still a crowd on the final day of the conference, more so on a Saturday. Yesterday we had a total of 9 speakers, including of course our Honorable Deputy Minister in MITI, to enlighten us all on the essential information and knowledge required in order to better harness the benefits resulting from ASEAN liberalisation of services sector. Today we'll be hearing from the horse's mouth on the actual ground experience, reflecting the opportunities and challenges of professional service providers of the respective speakers' home countries. I will follow yesterday's format. There is no reading of the speakers' biodata, simply because they are already beautifully printed and circulated via our program book. And for those who have not read the program book, please get one copy and look up for our speakers' biodata for this session. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have 2 parts in this session. That is, first part will be the paper presentation by 4 distinguished speakers from our ASEAN member countries, and followed immediately by the second part, which will be the forum discussion. Without further ado, may I invite the four speakers to be on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Engineer Ahmad Asri bin Abdul Hamid from Malaysia. Engineer Chong Ki Sen from Singapore. Engineer U Win Kai from Myanmar. And Mr. David Ma Sun To representing Cambodia. Mr. David Ma is Malaysian, for your information. Yeah. I have great pleasure to invite our guest speaker for the first paper presentation. Engineer Ahmad Asri is the right person to enlighten us on the professional service sector in Malaysia, simply because he had once held the post of the President of the Professional Services Development Corporation, PSDC Malaysia, for 3 years. He will be handling the subject matter from the perspective of Malaysia's scenario. And with that, please welcome Engineer Ahmad Asri.
Thank you, Dato' Engineer Angakau. Dato' Engineer Angakau is my friend. When I started service about 25 years ago, I was posted in Pahang, and he was then the famous waterworks engineer. Everybody in Pahang know him as a waterman. So I was lucky to be working with him then in Pahang. So I know him many years now. I've seen him. Of course, he's changed a lot. He's much more handsome then. I'm sorry, I have to say the truth. You know? Sometimes you have to state the truth. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting CIDB in particular to present a paper today. In fact, it is supposed to be presented by our CEO himself, Dato' Sri Engineer Dr. Judian Abdul Karim. But unfortunately, he couldn't make it. I think 1 or 2 weeks before Raya, he called me and he said, Asri, I'm very, very sorry. I got to give you the burden of presenting the paper in Johor. And so he explained to me. So I said, it's okay, I'm okay. It's not a burden to me. It's an honor to be representing him, to be here in front of all of you engineers, fellow engineers. So before I go further, because the idea is to have my photo there as long as possible. I like that photo somehow. I think they must have done some editing. You see the cheeks are very shiny. So I suspect Professor Hayati must have polished it in the photo. So leave it there first. So before we proceed with the slide, let me give an intro to what CIDB is, because earlier I didn't include in the slide because I think everybody knows who CIDB is. But since they are representative from Singapore and also Myanmar and Cambodia, and when I introduced myself to our representative from Singapore last night, he said, what? CIDB, what does that mean? So I say, rightfully I've got to start by telling what CIDB is. Just a short introduction as to what CIDB is. The CIDB, ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware, is the Construction Industry Development Board. It stands for Construction Industry Development Board. It is a statutory body. Statutory body means that it is established under the Act of Parliament. It is called Act 520 or CIDB Act. So we have an Act, and I think Dr. Majid rightfully pointed out yesterday that Act is meant to protect the public. So the Act is basically give the power and also roles to CIDB to basically protect the public in the construction industry. With regards to the construction industry, we are actually under the purview of Ministry of Works, and CIDB actually is meant to be a private sector driven organization because we have 11 board members. 4 are government servants, 7 are private. So a lot of direction and all that, a lot of inputs come from the private sectors. And the role of CIDB is to develop the Malaysian construction industry. And in developing the construction industry, we look at a few areas. One of the things is to develop the manpower. The manpower means the workers, the supervisors and all that, develop training and accredit and certify them, and also develop the construction firms, basically register and also accredit contractors. And we promote technology as well. And one of the technology that we are actively promoting now, as you are aware, is IBS, Industrialized Building System. And we keep telling people that IBS is the way to go. There's no other way to it, because now people are looking for speed, quality and all that, and IBS is the way. And we also look at the safety, health, environment as well as quality. We call it SHARE, safety, health, environment and quality. And on the business side, we look at the business environment of the Malaysian construction industry, look at the challenges and issues and try to assist in resolving the issues. And also we bring our construction companies overseas. We promote them overseas, facilitate them overseas. So basically that is what the organization called CIDB is. Okay, I hope that gives you a small introduction as what CIDB is. So now I've got to leave this handsome picture of mine to the next slide. Sorry about that. Okay, all right. So the title given to me is Opportunities and Challenges of Professional Service Providers. I will start the presentation by giving a review of the Malaysian construction industry now, as to basically trying to enlighten you on what are the opportunities available in Malaysia, and after that will be followed by what are the challenges that I believe is facing the PSPs. PSPs stand for Professional Services Firms, and when I say Professional Services Firms this morning, I mean it's the engineering, architectural and QS. Because professional services firm, when I was in PSDC, include accountancy, legal, all other professionals, who claim to be professionals. In fact, when I was in PSDC, when I gave a presentation, one guy said, I'm thinking of establishing a golf academy. Do you consider golf professional? I said, no. He said, Tiger Wood is a professional. Why? So it should be under your role to have a golf academy. So I had to explain to him what professional is. But I will. So basically, that is not considered professional. So professional services firms today is architectural, QS, as well as engineering firms. Okay. So now the first one, construction industry review. You see the contribution, the GDP trend of the economy and the construction sector has always been, in tandem. When the economic growth comes down, the construction sector comes down as well. When the economic grow, then the construction grow as well. But the magnitude is different. When the economy comes down, for example, in 1998, the economy dropped by 7.4%. The construction sector dropped by 24%. So the magnitude for construction sector is a lot more. So when we go up better than the economic growth. So that's the characteristic of the construction sector. However, of late, we can see there's a slight difference in the trend, in the sense that the economic growth somehow remain about 5%, 7%, 5% and all that, but the construction sector has gone up substantially. In fact, the last few years, you see in 2012, in 2011, the construction sector growth is only 4.6%, but in 2012, it is 18.5%. And the first quarter of 2013 is 14.7%. It is a very hot sector indeed. It's growing fast, but the economy is only about 4.1%. So you can see that the construction sector is growing very fast. And the thing that we have, and we anticipate that for 2013, the construction volume will be about 105 to 110 billion. In fact, a lot of people say it can go up to 120 billion because of the many projects that is in the pipeline now. But the thing that we have to note is some of the changes in the characteristic of the construction industry. You see, those days when I first joined CIDB in 1998, I remember the proportion has always been 50-50, in the sense that public project, government project is 50%, private sector project is 50%. But you see, of late, the trend of the public project has reduced 23%, and 2012, in fact, it registered only 15% of the total volume of construction. The rest, about 85%, is from the private sector. So those consultants, and I also told those contractors who rely on government project, you better think twice. You better do something, because government is not the source of projects anymore, not the main source of projects anymore. There is some change that we have to know. The other thing that we have to know is that in terms of the type of projects that is available, you see the trend has always been those days. the social utilities project has been quite high, relatively high in terms of proportion. Social utility project means hospitals, schools and all that. But nowadays you can see the percentage is only 5%. The major bulk of the project is actually infrastructure. Infrastructure talks about what? Road, highways, rails and all that. So infrastructure dominates the construction industry now, and the next one will be residential. Residential is something that next one is non-residential, office building and all that, followed by residential. Residential, in terms of proportion, has grown over the years. So you can see from the trend, you can anticipate what is going to happen in the future. That's how you should strategize yourself. And where the source of projects come from? The source of project basically, if you look at the so-called NKEA, the areas that has been identified by the government, there are 12 areas. And the main one is actually Greater Kuala Lumpur or Klang Valley. You see, in terms of GNI in 2020, the amount anticipated or the amount expected from Greater Kuala Lumpur Klang Valley project is come to about 394 billion. It's the most. The next one is oil and gas, is only about 131 billion. So you can see that in terms of GNI, the greatest source of project will come from the development of Kuala Lumpur. This is the effort by the government to make Kuala Lumpur attractive, livable, people can stay there, very happy there, and then the transportation system is good, the river is beautiful, so we have the River of Life projects. So these are initiatives by the government to make Kuala Lumpur attractive and hence bring a lot of foreign investment. So that's the thing. So what you have to know is that a lot of project is actually under the Greater Kuala Lumpur, followed by the oil and gas sector. And a lot of people ask why construction has not been identified as one of the NKEA. Is construction not important? The answer is simple. You look at all 12 NKEA, construction is part of it. You cannot run away from construction. People say, what tourism has got to do with construction? Construction of resort is for tourism. Construction of theme parks is for tourism. So all this NKEA will rely on construction. And construction will be the main industry that support the implementation of ETP. So, and then in terms of EPP projects, we target the investment, the value of investment targeted is 211.34 billion, and there were 149 EPP projects to create 400,000 jobs, and the GNI by 2020 is 135.6 billion. A large scale, you can see a lot of projects coming up, so that's why our projects, the value of projects has gone up. So some of the projects that has been identified in the 10 Malaysia plan, and I'm sure you already know by now, we're already about more than halfway through RM10 or 10 Malaysia plan. Highways and then power station, redevelopment of Sungai Buloh is yet to be implemented, valued at about 10 million. LRT expansion is now being implemented and is now become famous for the wrong reason. And then Iskandar development is very close to you here, and you know that development is very rapid there, and other projects as well. And one of the things that we have to highlight is that what is coming up next is something that is almost certain, is that the rail link between KL and Singapore. And that, even though the value has not been stated, a lot of people, some of the estimated value that has been quoted or given is about 30 billion ringgit. Imagine a real project, 30 billion ringgit. You know, so this is one of the high speed. Now there are a lot of prime ministers coming here from other countries. Basically, one of the reasons is because of this project. French prime minister was here recently. So I have a bit of suspicious when he comes, so I say it must be related to this project. I'm sure there are other prime ministers to come as well, because this project is really prestigious. It's something that is very big that is coming up, and something that I think will happen. We need to have this high rail link project. The next one is Doraza Exchange, is another project that is also coming up, and I know you know that it's in Sungai Besi. There is also big development with commercial buildings and all that. And yesterday, JPDC, Mr. CEO of JPDC already explained to you Pengerang. So Pengerang, according to the estimate, is about 170 billion. 60 billion is from Petronas. So the investment is so big. In fact, I don't know whether yesterday I should have asked the JPDC CEO, but when I attended the presentation by MPRC, the company or the agency under Prime Minister's department that look at this petroleum industry. So when I asked him how big is the Petronas investment in Pengerang, so he asked me, you know how big Kerteh is? I said, yeah, okay. You know how big Gebeng is? Okay, are you good in mathematics? I said, good. Okay, mathematics, I'm okay. A1 in at maths, so okay. So he said, okay, gaping plus kertih multiply by 3. Wow, that's how big Pengerang is. And people don't see this, but there are a lot of opportunities there in Pengerang. The project is really huge. Really huge. In fact, when we were talking about workers and all that, they were saying that we need 40,000 people there to work. Wow, 40,000 people, I think no Malaysian will be unemployed, you know. So there are a lot of projects that is coming up here, even in Johor. And the next one that is interesting is also the MRT project. The MRT project now is ongoing, and the estimated value is 36 billion. But this is the first line, you know, from Sungai Buloh to Kajang. It's the first line. When you build MRT, you ask Singapore, you build MRT, is one line enough? Definitely it's not enough. Now the government is talking about 2 other lines, the Circle Line as well as what they call the North-South lines. And there have to be other lines as well, because one line, single line cannot sustain itself. So Singapore is building a lot of lines now, MRT. I tried the MRT in Singapore, fantastic. So I think our standard should be at least that standard. And you know, but it is convenient, something that is needed by Kuala Lumpur. You look at the congestion now, it is something that is a must in Kuala Lumpur. We must hurry up, and the government is looking, like I said, 2 other lines. And I'm sure there are other cities, maybe Johor Bahru one day will have MRT as well. So what I'm saying is that if there are areas to focus in the construction industry, these are the areas. Let me tell you, building of roads and highways is nothing anymore. We have so many players who can do it. We have international plus companies who do projects overseas, highway and roads. So if you want to go into roads and highways, it's going to be very competitive. Okay, if you want to go into social utilities building, the building is not many anymore, and the competition is very high. You ask DKR, they call one hospital tender, there will be about 300 tenders. How to evaluate 300 tenders, 300 submissions? All this take the whole room, and how to evaluate? You know, so what I'm trying to say is that it is very competitive. So the new areas for construction, as far as we are concerned, is that one of them is oil and gas. Rapid is one, but there are also a lot of other projects in Sabah, for example. And in Malacca, there are a lot of oil and gas projects that is coming up. So oil and gas is one of the sector that is potential for construction industry. The next one is rail. MRT, high-speed rail, we've just completed the double tracking, and there are a lot of rails projects coming up. That's the only way to go because of its sustainability of sustainable kind of transport, and it's also something that is needed by the country as the urbanization increase. And the third one, that's something that the government cannot run away to still be in power in the next 5 years, is residential. So recently when the government announced that, you know, they want to build 1 million house and all that under one prima and all that. So all these affordable houses, and then they're also building low cost houses. So residential is something that will definitely be there. Will definitely be there in the next at least 10 years. And the other thing that CIDB also decide to focus is the renovation. I believe everybody in this room have done renovation in their house. And unfortunately now renovation, when it comes to contracting, renovation is controlled by foreigners now. The so-called workers now have become mandor, and they are foreign. They are actually from foreign country. Foreign workers have become mandor now. So renovation work actually comes to billion per year. The value of renovation work is estimated billions per year. And here we are. We basically give it to foreigners. So we have to develop the expertise in renovation. And also the other thing that has to be given priority in the future, no doubt about it, as the country develop, as there are more and more infrastructure in place, you have to do maintenance. So maintenance is something that also an area that should be focused by our companies, construction companies in general, contractors and consultants. Okay. So what are the challenges then? The challenges for PSP, professional service providers. The first source of challenge, the drivers of change, I call it, is liberalisation. Liberalisation has been talked about 5-6 years ago, 10 years ago, I remember. In fact, PSDC that is mentioned by Dato' Akau, the organisation that I had the benefit or the honour of leading for 3 years last time, was established because of the challenge of liberalisation. They think, at that time, the professional services firms feel that they should be assisted to face the challenges of liberalisation. So that is the one source of challenge that is coming up. The next one is technology. Technology now, you cannot run away from technology to be competitive. And among the technology that is very relevant, like I said, is IBS is one of them. And there are also the so-called building information modeling. BIM is also another one. BIM is already standard in Singapore. I think in Singapore, if you want to submit plan, you have to submit using BIM, isn't it? So I think you can confirm that. Yeah, but BIM is already practiced in Singapore. But here we are still, the take up is very slow because of the cost of the software and all that. So technology is one. Next one, something that you cannot run away. Whatever you do now, people talk about sustainability, going green, except for choosing political parties. Don't choose green. But other than that, it's okay. You go green. Okay. This is okay. And then the next one is capacity and capability. The requirement for capacity and capability is a lot more now. You have to be very highly capable. You have to have capacity to be competitive. And procurement strategy is another one. If you study the trend, nowadays people don't talk. Not those days when you talk about procurement, it's easy. Everybody knows that JKR or the consultant will design a project. After that, they put it for tender. After tender, and then they evaluate, and then after that, they award letter for what's come out, and then you do the project. Simple. But now people talk about PFI, PPP, all kind of P's. There are a lot of challenges there. So where you as consultant, where do you position yourself under this scenario? Suddenly out of the blues, the project come up under PPP, under PFI. So where, consultant, where are you now? I mean, how do you position yourself when PPP is the dominant sort of procurement? And the last one is perception. Perception is, somehow the perception of a lot of clients, whether it is government or private, Malaysian consultant, boleh lah, that's kind of perception. Somehow they have that kind of perception. And that's why I'm not surprised when government, you remember in June, when government announced earlier saying that One Prima must construct affordable houses, 1 million affordable houses in a period of 10 years. And PAM come up with a statement in June. You know what they say? This is in Malay, so if you don't understand Malay, I'm sorry, but this is in Malay. PAM says, arkitek tempatan memiliki credibility untuk memberikan perkhidmatan terbaik kepada projek. You dengar? Okay, the next one, dia kata, PAM berharap kerajaan terus memberi sokongan dengan memberi peluang lebih besar kepada arkitek tempatan untuk membuktikan kebolehan. We are still trying to prove our capability. What does it mean? We are begging. It's not something that the government, it's like telling the government, we are okay, please choose us, please support us. It's like that. You see the tone of the statement? The tone is not positive to say that, Malaysian can easily take up the project and do no. But we are saying that kita boleh, kita ada credibility, tolong sokong kita, something like that. Can you read about it? It's like merayu for project or begging for project. Which Malaysian professional shouldn't be like that. Shouldn't be like that. Because I know that Malaysian professional, I took some of our professionals overseas. They are fantastic in terms of creativity. Malaysian professionals are one of the most creative people in the world. Believe me, our architects have won awards everywhere. A lot of international awards they won, but it's quiet, not very promoted. But they are good. We are good. And you see Malaysian professionals, not the firms, professionals, engineers, architects, and how many of them are now in Abu Dhabi and in Dubai? How many of them? And you ask this client, why do you choose these Malaysian engineers? They say, compared to price, Malaysian engineers is higher than, say, Egyptian engineers, Lebanese engineers, and Indian engineers, of course. But you ask them, why do you choose Malaysian engineers? They say, Malaysian engineers, number one, very good, creative. They are very creative. They are good at problem solving. And the third one, they say, the value that Malaysian engineers or Malaysian professionals have is that they are very trustworthy. They say, very trustworthy. You leave it to the Malaysian, most probably they will not shortcut and they will not lie to you and all that. They will not mislead you. At least that is overseas. I don't know what happened in Malaysia, but overseas is like that. We have that reputation. We have that reputation, which means that we are good. But we are not the perception of Malaysian itself are not good on us, on a professional service firm. And because of over the years, we have not developed that branding. We have not developed that reputation. We have not promoted ourselves so much. Because you see contractors, they're very good at telling people what they do. Consultants, they're very quiet. You go to function, a group of consultants will sit at one corner there, laughing away with their very professional jokes and all that. That's it. Dirty professional jokes. That's it. But they don't really sell. Say, this project I do, They fail to realize that actually you cannot see the steel inside the reinforcement steel inside the column. People cannot see. People see the outside and say, who is the contractor that do it? Contractor dapat nama, you know. But actually the engineers do it wonderfully, you know. What I'm saying is that the promotion is not good. And because of that, the perception of people to Malaysian professional service providers is not good as well. And we have, in the end, what we have to do, we have to beg for project. Tolonglah saya ada credibility. Come on, man. You shouldn't be like that. We should be saying, kita memang ada credibility lah, what you're talking about. No, we are better in terms of course, we are better. Okay, I stop that because this is my promotion line when I was in PLDC, so I stop that. Alright, anyway, so the implication of liberalisation, why the government so excited about liberalisation? Why MITI paint a very colourful picture of liberalisation? Because liberalisation is something that we cannot stop. We cannot resist. We need liberalisation because we need foreign direct investment. We need investment. We need to be attractive for people to come and invest in our country. Our country is small. We are an exporting nation. We are a country that rely on direct foreign investment. We cannot run away, and hence we have to make it attractive for foreign investment. And so we have to adopt liberalisation. So we cannot run away from it. And some of the benefits of liberalisation is that number one is the implication of liberalisation. The first one that yesterday Dr. Majid was talking about fear, and fear is actually definitely there will be increased level of competition. I think the challenges of liberalisation and the benefit of liberalisation has been well explained yesterday. So I shall not go shall not dive into it. I straightway go to the last part of we are still very small. Our firms are still very small. So I believe that what do we have to do to move forward? The first one is the government itself must promote the quality-based selection method in employing consultants. Rotation method doesn't work. It doesn't encourage capacity building. It doesn't encourage good consultants to be developed. You know, we have to have consultants that have reputation, capable and all that, and they should be awarded projects based on this, rather than based on rotation or your turn. And as you already get project, we give to the next one. No, doesn't work. That doesn't help capacity building. The second one is there must be financial assistance. I think through Matrade they have to provide a financial assistance for export, because consultant, in order for you to be competitive, you got no two other way but to export your services. It is only through export that you are able to develop your capacity. You know feeding contract, you know how the international market is, and hence you are better able to compete in the local market. The third one is the professional service providers must develop their capacity and capability. Yeah, and then also government, this is a proposal by association those days, professional association. Government must support people who go and present papers overseas, because these are part of branding of Malaysia professional services firm. And this one, the E is yesterday, I think deliberated by Dr. Majid. So as a conclusion, the first one is there are a lot of opportunities in construction in Malaysia now. A lot of opportunities. If you don't grab it, it is very, very unfortunate. We have the capability, we have the capacity. It is up to you to grab it, to position yourself, through your networking to get the project. So liberalisation, increase competition. You have to be competitive. So you must strengthen your network, enhance your capacity, maybe become multidisciplinary, able to provide all kinds of services. And perhaps one of the things that you should seriously consider is venture into new areas like oil and gas and rail. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Asri. Sorry. Next is the paper presentation from our second distinguished speaker, Engineer Chong Ki Sen from Singapore. Engineer Chong and I actually are no stranger to each other. We used to meet up occasionally since we first met in the year 2003, when I was then the IEM Chairman Southern Branch. Engineer Chong will address the topic from the viewpoint of Singapore scenario. So please, you have already acknowledged Engineer Chong just now. Okay, I will invite Mr. Chong, Engineer Chong, to deliver his paper. Please, Engineer Chong.
Thank you, Engineer Ngakao, the Chair of the Forum, Engineer David Lee, the IEM Southern Branch Chair, fellow engineers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. So, for me, in Singapore and Johor is just very nearby. I'm a frequent visitor of Johor. And of course, I attend most of the IEM Southern Branch annual dinner. So I'm very familiar with all the members here. Okay, I've jumped into the presentation. Your time. What my topic will be the opportunity and challenges of service provider in the built environment. And this is the Singapore scenario. Okay, Singapore basically, we are scarce on land. Our area is only 723 kilometers with a human population of 5.18 million. So we don't have natural resources. What we have is natural scarcity, lack of everything. But fortunately, we do have the human capital, which is key to our economic growth. Okay. In terms of the trade, Singapore is basically a trade-orientated and pro-business economy. Our GDP about 270 billion USD per year. Per capita is about $52,000 per year. Manufacturing actually dominates the economy with 26% in GDP, finance 22%, and the supporting built environment is between 4 to 6%. Okay, what I will do is that I will cover the regulatory framework of service provider. And then after that, I will talk about the opportunities in Singapore and then the challenges of professional service provider. Okay, professional service provider in the built environment actually is provided by professional engineers as well as registered architects. And professional engineers are basically registered with the Professional Engineers Board, which is PB, and registered architect by the Board of Architects. And professional service providers are regulated by the Building Control or Building and Construction Authority, BCA, as well as many other government agencies. Okay, how the relationship between the various stakeholders? So the developer, they will initiate a project, they will appoint the professional service provider, which basically are consultants, and of course the builder. And the government play the role to regulate, to ensure safety for the development. And of course, they will regulate the developer, the consultant, as well as the builder. And the Professional Engineers Board and Board of Architects basically assist the government in the registration of all these professionals. And the role of the Institution of Engineers and the Singapore Institute of Architects basically is the so-called linkage between the government agencies and the service provider, in the sense that if there are regulatory framework that is coming out that maybe doesn't serve the best of the industry, we will then provide the feedback. And for the institution, we will also provide training and professional development for the professional engineers and the architects. In terms of the permitting processes, basically we have the URA, which is taking care of the planning parameters of the project, and you have to seek planning permission. You have to obtain first maybe the provisional permission and then the written permission. After that, you will go to the building control system. Basically, you have to apply for structural plans approval, and then you move down to apply for building plan approval. For the building plan approval, basically these are architectural design as well as functional design, and many other government agencies will then will be involved in stipulating their requirements. So what I have listed on here is only a few government agencies, but I count probably there will be about 30 government agencies that you need to clear. But of course, certain projects you may have less, and certain projects that are more complicated may have more government agencies regulating them. Okay, for structural design, basically only civil engineers could carry out structural design. And for mechanical and mechanical design, of course, the mechanical PE has to do it. And for electrical design, electrical PE would have to be the person involved in this project. In terms of building plans, as I said earlier, it's basically the architectural and the functional design. And these are the ones that actually get the most credit of all the design. And this can be prepared and submitted by not only architects, but actually professional engineers. So there are projects that can be only be designed, the building plan can only be designed and submitted by professional engineers. Even architects cannot submit that. So there's a list in the handout that I have given. So, but I will just give you some examples. So projects like an expressway tunnel, only a civil PE can make the building plan submission as well as the structural plan submission and the M&E submission. So the professional engineers covers the full aspect of the whole process in the consultancy services, as well as pedestrian underpass and dry docks. Only engineers are involved in this project. Architects are not allowed to do this. Industrial jetties, also similar. Passenger jetties. So these are just some examples that actually professional engineers can concentrate in, because these are restricted or restricted to only professional engineers. But there are also projects that both the architect or the professional engineers can do. So that one, at least the engineers can be can prepare the architectural design and submit to the government agencies. And what are they? If you are talking about a cable car station, this can be done either by an architect or by professional engineers. If you are talking about a petrochemical plant, it's the same. It's either an engineer or an architect. In Singapore, usually it's the engineer who do this submission, and I'm involved in such projects. Industrial buildings. Today's industrial building, if you look at this picture, you can see the swimming pool in the background with a gym and facilities available. It's no more the traditional square block industrial buildings, and this can be designed both architecturally as well as structurally, M&E, by a professional engineer. Buildings that has to be only, that means it's restricted to the architect, professional architect, basically will be residential buildings as well as the commercial buildings. Okay, I'll now touch on the Singapore construction demand. Basically, the demand for construction is still very strong. It contributes 28 billion Sing dollar in 2012. And the contribution was ramped up by the public and private housing projects. Housing was a significant aspect. Of course, the MRT train network, we have to continuously expand our network system and many other infrastructure projects. As for 2013 this year, the estimated is between 26 to 32 billion Singapore dollars. If you look at the chart, basically you can see is that since 2007, the construction demand is above 20 billion Singapore dollars. It came down a little bit in 2009 during the financial crisis, and it shoot up after that, but is now moderating between 26 to 32 billion. So anything above 20 billion is still considered as a reasonable demand in the construction industry. In terms of distribution, we are still the same in balance. In terms of public being 53%, it's a 50-50 kind of thing. Our private sector is 47%. I heard Malaysia is now moving more to the private projects. Singapore, I believe, will still remain, and it is slightly public sector driver with equally strong private sector investment. In terms of commercial project demand, basically Singapore has a strategic location for businesses as well as tourism. Therefore, the commercial space demand will be sustained, and in 2013 it's expected to be 2.7 to 3 billion in 2013. Residential housing demand is very significant. I think in this kind of area also there is a significant demand output in terms of residential units. But in Singapore itself, 40% of the total construction demand are from the residential housing. So it's basically supported by home ownership as well as investment in private, in residential property, which basically due to the advantage of the low loan interest rate presently. In Singapore, you can get it at 1.5% interest rate per annum, so there's significantly low interest rate as far as Singapore is concerned. And about the demand would be weighted down moving forward because the government has implemented many, we call it the cooling measures, putting additional stamp duties so that it cools the demand and prevent the bubble forming. Industrial projects and civil engineering projects likely to remain at a healthy level, 6 to 7 billion in 2013. Basically, the MRT network expansion, roads and bridges expansion, as well as cable tunnel expansion, this will ensure level of great demand. The majority of the industrial projects will stem from the manufacturing investment. So if there's a significant amount of investment in the so-called development in terms of manufacturing, then there will be a healthy demand of projects to sustain that. So the majority will stem from Jurong Island, the Tuas, and the many other areas. The high number of big medical sciences company is leveraging Singapore. We are coming to Singapore. The opportunities looking ahead, as now I've shared with you, is 2012 and 2013 this year, so 2014 and above and beyond, what happens. So we are looking at the construction demand projected in 2014 and 2015 between 20 billion and 28 billion. And then with the increase in population and tourism growth, it would weigh both the demand for public housing, and not only public housing, then you need infrastructure, transportation, and other amenities projects will come with it. Okay, some of the projects that you see is probably like the South Beach at the Beach Road, which is next to the Raffles Hotel. These are two block of mega skyscraper. It is a kind of mixed development with residential, hotel, retail, and recreation. The MRT system has been said, we need to develop what we are having into the future would be the Thomson Line. Thomson Line will bring us from the north down to the south, the city, and you can see the last station they put there is Woodlands North. Potentially that would link to JB, and that's where the Woodlands North station would be. And we have the so-called Cross Island Line. It will run from the east to the west to serve the industrial area, also in the Jurong area, but for people to commute from the eastern side all the way to the western side. So these projects probably will be maybe completed probably in 2020 to 2030. So I mean, train system requires a long construction period. So there will be opportunities for professional service provider into the future. There are new areas in Jurong Island. It's been there is in red, you can see is actually amalgamating about seven independent islands into one single island. We call the Jurong Island, and we call that the chemical hub, or petrochemical hub, and the trading hub. I would put it is that the success of this particular hub is basically where an investor come in, he take the feedstock from his neighbor. He doesn't need to bring in his feedstock. He just buy the feedstock from his neighbor. He get his utilities from his neighbor, the steam, water, electricity, whatever, from the neighbor. He don't need to have his own utilities plant. And then he just process. What he needs is just a process unit. And with the process, during the process, all the wastewater will be treated by your neighbor. You just throw it to them, they will handle everything for you. And when you will finish your finished product, you don't need to have your own finished product storage. You just throw it to your neighbor again, and they will just transport it out for you, or to another plant that do further processing. So this is actually the model that of what Jurong Island is about. So what you need only is just the process unit. You don't need anything else in a sense. Of course, the other area will be the Tuas Biomedical Park. It's basically a dedicated hub for medical manufacturing activities. There are many global players here, basically GSK, Lonza, Novartis, Roche, Pfizer, Alcon. These are basically, as you know, the growing Asian middle class actually drives development in the biomedical sciences, because all of us would want to live longer. What is the business model and how to attract investor into Singapore? You know, land cost is never cheap in Singapore. Basically, the business model is that if you are aware of medical product as it is, if you want to make a tablet, it's actually a relatively simple process. It's just a simple blending process. But of course, the effort made to research to find the correct formula is take a long time. It costs a lot of money. But when you produce it, probably a 2-cent production, and you can sell it for $2. So the intellectual property protection is very significant for us to attract people to want to come in, to invest, and put their pharmaceutical plant into your country. That is very significant. Because as I said, the production is just so simple. Anybody can do it as long as you know the formula. Next area, aerospace. Singapore is actually very small in aerospace. As you know, if you are making aircraft, is going to be, you need a big space as it is to assemble a big jumbo and things like that. But what we are doing now in 2031, the Asian Pacific fleet is expected to triple to 13,500 aircraft. So what we have done is that we set aside the 320 hectare of Seletar Aerospace. We have the existing Seletar Airport there. So we are making it into an aerospace park to host an integrated cluster of manufacturing and assembly of aircraft engines and components. Not the aircraft itself, but the engines and the components. And this would include the training and the R&D. Basically, Rolls-Royce is already here, and many other big companies are doing their research into aircraft engines in Singapore. So this is another area that Singapore is embarking into. Okay, the next one is the One North. One North basically is the new approach, in the sense that previously we always said work, live and play, but we add in a new dimension, which is to learn in the environment where you have a cluster of world-class research facilities and business park spaces like the biomedical sciences, information technology, as well as the media industries. So it is actually, you include these spaces for parks, education, residential and recreation amenities, all into a melting pot, and all that's where all the talent and ideas and business opportunity will be there. So it basically, you work there, you live there, you play there and as well you learn there. So you have the functional police, you have the bio police, and of course you have the media police. Even the media corp will be shifting over there in due time. So those are the opportunities. And now I have also shared with you the further new opportunities in Singapore, just announced last week by our Prime Minister at the Singapore National Day, right in 2013. And what are they? It will be the further expansion of the Changi Airport. We need to maintain Singapore's position as an international hub and create more opportunities for Singaporeans as well. And there's of course competition with our neighbors like Thailand, Malaysia maybe. And what we are moving on is that first we have the Jewel. Jewel basically is a building that is a large-scale indoor garden with a breathtaking, we call that the central waterfall. So it's a garden within the building. And then of course we are moving on to Terminal 4 and 5. Basically we're going to double our Changi Airport capacity. Presently we are handling about 50 million passengers per year. So probably when we double it, it will be about 100 million or more per year. Next big project that is coming up would be the container consolidation of all our container berth. Our present container berth is at Tanjung Pagar, the Brani, as well as Pasir Panjang. In fact, Pasir Panjang is still now constructing, as you are aware, and that is about 60 over container berth in what we have. And all these three areas will be shifted to the Tuas Basin, Tuas area, and therefore freeing up this southern area for more lifestyle and residential and commercial development. So that will be a 60-70 container berth project over there. Each container berth is about 200 meters length. So we're going to see a lot of projects. This will probably bring us to next 2 decades. Okay, so we look at the challenges now. Basically, today the project's complexity and the workforce, basically consumer expectations are higher, and then increasing project complexity. As you can see in this interlace, these are blocks of buildings stacking on each other. So for a structural engineer, it's going to be very challenging, as well as the unique design of the external. So we need a highly skilled and qualified workforce. And of course, there's also a shortage of skilled manpower. Manpower is not sufficient for service provider. You need really a highly skilled and qualified workforce. That's the first challenge. Second challenge, we are always in constant need to increase our productivity so as to remain competitive, because we need to adopt highly integrated and advanced technology like the BIM and even in the construction will be mainly precast design and no more conventional, simple conventional RC design, structural design, composite design, new materials and stuff like that. So a lot of knowledge you would have to acquire for service provider. And of course the fees competition among firms is always the issue. In Singapore we have the quality fees method. That means the quality will take about 60% and fees 40%, or even sometimes quality 70%, fees 30%. So you score first significantly on the quality part, and then a smaller percentage for fees. So that's how we try to make sure that because the service itself is very difficult to quantify itself, that it has to protect public interest and professionals' ethics and things like that. So it cannot be just purely on cost. So it has to be quality that should come first. The challenge basically is to meet our various BCA standards in buildability. When we submit our plans, we need to achieve a buildability score that is acceptable to the agency. That means how buildable is this? And they are always moving up the bar every few years. Now for the contractors, you have to make sure that it can be constructible. What type of construction technology that you are adopting, so that they say that, okay, that reduce the manpower to construct more prefab or whatever technology you have. So constructability score, you need to achieve that. as well as the environmental and sustainability requirement. Basically, that will be the green mark. Previously, green mark was a voluntary, but now we have to have a minimum green mark. Of course, you want the platinum, you work a bit harder, that is optional, but you need to have at least 50 marks, that means to pass the green mark. And they will be moving this up with time. Of course, you have to design for access friendly as well as sustainability, high quality and safe. And in today's design, the challenges, as you can see, it's not just a traditional conventional design. You have to harness solar energy. You have to look at the wind pattern to make sure that you can maximize natural ventilated area, and you have to try to shield away from the weather itself, the rain and things like that. You think of features to reduce the intent, I mean the effect of the heavy rain and stuff like that. So these are one of the service provider challenges. You need to be very innovative in your design, no more just as per normal kind of design. Okay, BIM adaptation. Yes, we already have adopted BIM, starting with the architectural design that is has to be submitted, and then later on the structural design as well as M&E design will have to come in. Basically, BIM is useful in terms of cost and construction, useful in cost and construction management, and it enables all the architectural detail, structural detail, M&E detail in one single drawing. It's basically a three-dimensional drawing. The challenges to the professional, of course, is to not only just buying the software, which they sell it for only 1 year and then you have to renew your license again. The computer itself, the hardware is also to handle such a big drawing, you really need a higher-end hardware. But how about your engineer, your CAD detailer? They will need to go to training, and they need to be very skillful to adopt and be able to create this intelligent 3D drawing. It's not just a drawing of nice, but it contains all the elements of it. It can actually do taking off from the whole drawing without have to just physically do your own calculation. Adoption of the Eurocode, this is also another challenge. Of course, we already started adoption of the Eurocode in April this year. It's a 2-year coexistence period, and after 2015 is mandatory. You can see we already have the so-called the base and then the Singapore national annexes. So adoption of Eurocode is also a challenge to the professional service provider, because all your engineers would be familiar with British standards or any other standards, and then you have to start to relook into Eurocode requirements. Okay, in summary, basically Singapore is a pro-business policy, has a pro-business policy. Holistic approach in supporting investors, that's very important. If an investor come in and you don't provide them the support, I think it's difficult for them to thrive, and therefore they would move away. The other thing is that we have to keep on test bedding new ideas and solutions in areas of urban living, aging. Yes, baby boomer, the population is aging. Healthcare, which come with aging, and then lifestyle. Lifestyle is again quite different 20, 30 years ago. Today's lifestyle is very vibrant. They expect more, the expectation is higher. So lifestyle product could also be one of the elements of opportunities. And the construction outlook remains promising, and various emerging infrastructure development is underway. So challenges I have said is that you require skilled and motivated and competent workforce. You have to adopt technology to provide highly integrated and one-stop service. You need to be one-stop. You cannot just say, oh, I only can provide you this service and I cannot do any other thing. So client today wanted a one-stop. They want everything to be handled by you. And then we have to remain competitive in adopting all this technology, and then in order to be sustainable. Okay, we are coming to the end. What is the next big thing? Of course, the next big thing for the professional service provider will be climate change, because it requires innovative and sustainable solution. And to address climate change, the solution would then result in new projects, and if the new projects, then will be new opportunities for service provider. So I don't have the solution for the climate change, but I have the opportunities for you to learn more about climate change, which is basically what IES is doing, is that we are organizing the inaugural World Engineers Summit from the 9th to 15th September. The theme is Innovative and Sustainable Solution to Climate Change. Okay, we have a panel of, these are just a few of the speakers. These are prominent international speakers, and of course local as well as international. It will be held from 13th of September to, 11th to 13th of September. It's a 3-day conference. On the 14th of September, there will be a visit to some of the interesting area in the Pulau Semakau landfill area. Basically, it's a big landfill where the natural habitat will be remaining as what it is, while next to it is the landfill area. And then the Marina Barrage, the world probably one of the world's city reservoir in Singapore. The Congo waterways, creating kind of a waterway in a public housing area, as well as the one north that I discussed earlier on. Okay, there are participants from more than 50 countries, and you can network with them. We have the welcome reception at this one on the Bund, which is the former Clifford Pier, is on the 10th of September, and then the gala dinner in the Marina Bay Sand area on the 13th of September 2013. So if you want to attend, and what I could also offer you is special discount. You just come to me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Engineer Chong, for your interesting paper. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, coming up next is our third paper presentation by none other than U Win Kai from Myanmar. U Win Kai is a much sought after engineer both in his home country and ASEAN as well. He is currently holding at least 9 important portfolios, serving both his countries and ASEAN's interests, covering a wide range of government commissions, special committees, and numerous professional organizations. We can see U Win Kai is such an accomplished man, and we are indeed very privileged to have him here to speak to us. Okay, the floor is yours now, U Win Kai.
Thank you for such a highly complimentary remark. Engineer Chukobeng, Engineer David Lee, Chairman, and fellow engineers, a very good morning to you. Today, I will be presenting about my country. It will be a different perspective from what Malaysia and Singapore explained just now, because we are basically starting from scratch. So, meaning that there will be a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of challenges, as explained by our colleagues. I will be going through these contents. This is what Myanmar is. Comparing to other GDPs, our country is only 50 billion, so we have a lot to catch up. And our per capita is still very low. And you will notice that the GDP contribution is mostly from the agriculture sector, where still 70% of my people still live in the rural areas. So we are a country of 676,000 square kilometers. It's a sizable territory with 60 million people. So just to take you through where we are now. Unless we know where we are now, it will be very difficult to move ahead. So I will have to just briefly hold that we were under the British for many years. And then in 1962, after a short period of parliamentary democracy, we were under the military for many years and under a very difficult time as a socialist country, which non-ASEAN countries except Vietnam. So the military had to take over again in 1988 until March 2011. So we can say that where we are going now started in March 2011, and we have pushed many reforms during this very short time of 30 months. And we have now relations, good relations, better relations with many developed countries. And importantly also, we have enacted a very good incentive law, in foreign investment law. And in a very short time, we have attracted about 1.2 billion and creating more than 65,000 jobs. So this is our president. He's doing a lot of foreign trips. And these are the investment laws of Myanmar. So right now we do need a lot of investments for technology, for capital, and for creating jobs. And since we have other special zones, we've created the special economic zone laws. This is the foreign investment law and the regulations that go with that. And foreign investments are right now flowing in these areas. Mostly we are, at the beginning, we are encouraging labor intensive, such as garments and apparel, shoes, food processing, pharmaceuticals, automobile. Tan Chong from Malaysia, we will be building a huge Nissan plant in Babur region. Hotel. Of course, mining and oil and gas. These are areas where a lot of investors would like to invest, but we do need to be very cautious due to environmental concerns. And other things like power plants, we still need to provide more electricity to our people. Communications, that is also very lagging. We have only 7% mobile penetration at the moment. So as we are moving ahead, as in all countries, infrastructure development will be the key if we want to have a 7.7 GDP growth over the next 15 years. Not forgetting that this has to trickle down to the 70% of our rural people. So basically our country has very high mountain ranges in the east and the west. And we have 4 rivers, very big rivers flowing in the central area. So necessitating a lot of bridges. So that's why we embarked on a very important bridge building project. So at this moment, you can see that after 1988, we built more than 280 bridges. This is one of the larger ones near Mandalay. This is across the Ayeyarwady River. This is another one across the Ayeyarwady River. Presently, we have only one bridge across the Ayeyarwady River. It's called the Alva Bridge, built by the British. Right now, we have more than 14 bridges across the Ayeyarwady River. The thing about the bridge building is during the past 25 years, we were under very strict sanctions, so most of the bridges had to be built by our own engineers. So what I mentioned just now, the 200 plus bridges were mostly built by Myanmar engineers. This is the latest one coming across Yangon, called the Dela Bridge. The uniqueness about Yangon is it's a very old city. It has a lot of heritage buildings, and also one of the famous Shwedagon Pagoda. So it will be very difficult to build or modernize the city. So that's why we are looking to develop the other side of the river, which is called Dela. So this bridge will be one of the important steps to do that. So the roads are also very important. So we are building roads for many areas. And Naypyidaw is a very brand new city, similar like Putrajaya in Malaysia. Mostly it's an administrative capital, so mostly government people live there. This is the road going to Naypyidaw. This is the parliament buildings. We have about 1,000 members of parliament in two houses, the upper house and the lower house. Since we're going to host the SEA Games this year in December, we have embarked on the ambitious plan to build many sports complexes. That one is a football stadium. Road networks. We have about 39,000 kilometers of paved roads and about 80,000 unpaved roads, linking small towns and cities. There's a lot to be done in that area also. Railways. Railways was established in Myanmar since 1885. It's one of the oldest railway networks in Asia. But right now the new one will be basically from Chao Phu area, Chao Phu to Muse on the border with Thailand. We are building this railroad parallel to the oil and gas pipeline running from Chao Phu Island. And we are intending that area to be an economic multimodal corridor. So most of the industrialization will be conducted along the pipeline. So there is a necessity for a railroad. So more than 800 miles of railroad will be building. It will be quite challenging, involving 400 plus bridges and 100 tunnels. So also we will be upgrading our Yangon-Mandalay 700 kilometer railroad. But that one cannot be for high speed. This is a very old track, so it will just be to maybe the speed will be improved a bit. There's also a plan to link our new Antawadi airport to Yangon with the high-speed railroad. So you can see that we have developed railroad network. This is our rail network map. So it's basically in the central area of our country. All those greenish areas are very high mountains there. And you can see in the north we have snow-capped mountains. Myanmar is the only country in Asia with have snow-capped mountains. Airports. This is another area of development. We are conducting many airports, especially for Gateway in Yangon. This is a newly finished, commissioned Naypyidaw International Airport. By next year, international airlines will be landing there, so you can make a direct flight to Naypyidaw. This is the existing Manly International Airport. It will be the brand new Antawadi International Airport. This is about 60 kilometers away, north of Yangon. So in 2017, after that, you will have to land in this airport and then travel to Yangon by that train I mentioned just now. And also the ports. Since we have a very long coastline, about 2,800 kilometers of coastline, there's a lot of requirement for having deep sea ports and for future development such as coal-fired power plants and also LNG terminals which are coming up. There will be a lot to do in that area. So this is the plan for the Dawei Deep Sea Port, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. This is in the south of our country. And it will be also a base for industrial zones. And the way is located in a strategic area, as you can see. The location is very conducive. And this is the Madeh. This is already in existence. We already commissioned the oil terminal and the deep sea port in July last month. So this is a up and running facility. So this is the gas pipeline I mentioned, which is supplying about 400 million cubic feet of gas per day to China. And I mentioned there we have the right to offtake both the gas and the oil from this pipeline. So there will be economic activities along this pipeline, including the railroad. This is the hot item now to develop the Tilawa Special Economic Zone. This is basically, the developer will be Japanese, so it will be under ODA grant offered by Japan. And this is the nearest port, this is Yangon. So this is where the new project will be, including port facilities. So this is one of the up and coming areas for very large investments in this area. Electricity. We are lacking in electricity. As you will all know, our country have electrification ratio of only 26%. Means 74% of our country don't have access to electricity. Although we have a lot of hydropower resources. So that's why we will have to work a lot in that area, including invitation for investments for power plants, which we are doing now. So also it will need to upgrade our transmission line capacity also. So right now we are in the process of upgrading our 230 kV lines to 500 kV lines. Because as I mentioned, our country, most of our hydro resources are in the north, but the users are mostly in the south. So we do need high capacity transmission lines to transfer that electricity. So these are some of the plants that we have now. For base load, we are looking for coal fire in the southern side and also using gas. Because hydropower, we do have potential, we do have resources, but it is seasonal. And in the dry season from February to May, we have a problem generating electricity. Although we have the installed capacity, the water level is not enough. Communication. Right now, tele density is very low, but we hope to increase the tele density to reach the 30 million of our people by awarding two operators with a concession. And these two companies are Telenor from Norway, and the other one is from Tata Telecoms. They've been awarded. And we hope that in the very near future, most of our people will have access to have a mobile phone. And that system will also be very beneficial, not only for communication, but for news, education, healthcare, weather, e-government, and banking services. Right now, this is the coverage. Education. As in all countries, we need to upgrade our education system, as this will be the backbone of any country's development. So we do have a good workforce between 15 to 65 years, about 46 million, and we have to educate these young people. So right now, our university population is about 760,000, and our school population is about 8 million. Right now, on the technical side, as I am more in the technical education, we are spending a lot of budget on improving and upgrading the technical universities. And right now, we re-established two centers of excellence. That is the Yangon Technical University and Manly Technical University. This is the number of higher education institutions which are under different ministries. Not all of them are under the Ministry of Education. Some are under the Science and Technology, some under the Ministry of Health, like the medical colleges, they are under the Health Ministry. So we do have different ministries running different kinds of universities. This is where I graduated from. This was established in 1954, and this is previously called the Rangoon Institute of Technology, RIT. These are the vocationals, which are also very important, as we do have needs not only for the engineers, but for technologists, technicians, and skilled workers. the basic education. Regarding the professional services, which is the topic of this conference, we do have in other areas like medical, dentist, accountancy council, and to form the engineering council. So that's what we as in MES are lobbying very hard, and that bill has been put to the parliament. And right now, when that law is approved, these are the registration that we will accept. It's not only for the professional engineers, but also for registered engineers, registered technicians, and other registered graduate technician means a technologist, because we do have a BTech system in our country, which is a 4-year course. And we will also have a system for registering foreign engineers. And item number 6 is basically for the MRA that we signed with the other ASEAN countries. So the challenges, we suffered quite a lot in the last 20 years. But now we've opened our doors, and we expect to have about 170 billion in investments over the next 15 years. It's a very conservative estimate, and it will also create jobs for about 30 million people. As you know, the trend of investment is right now in the manufactured products for export and the food and beverage industry. For the construction industry, there is also high potential because of the significant growth due to investment in hotels, buildings, industrial zones, power stations, logistics, and many other things which naturally follow in any country which have to go through this process. So these are new residentials which are coming up. So we do have other challenges like how we're going to coordinate all these training, as these are done both by public and private, as we need to build up the vocational and the professional services sector. So in conclusion, we like to know where we stand. So our strength right now is very strong commitment to reforms set by our government. We do have a youthful population, and also we could provide low-cost labor force, which will be attractive to foreign investment. We do have a very rich supply of natural resources, including land, water, gas, and minerals. Abundant agricultural resources to be exploited, but we need productivity improvement in that area, and the potential for tourism. Opportunities, strategic location, huge potential for renewable energy, and for investment in a very wide range of sectors. The constraints, we still have a very weak macroeconomic management, lack of experience, lack of knowledge of market mechanism, limited fiscal resource mobilization, underdeveloped financial sector, inadequate infrastructure in transport, electricity, communication, low education and health achievements, and limited economic diversification. So we're trying to know where we are. That's where we believe we have constraints. and the risk from economic reform being too fast and the liberalization. There are always forces that resist to changes. Also, risk from climate change. We are experiencing floods, pollution, which might be generated through rapid industrialization. And also, we are trying to resolve, but still have some tension from internal ethnic conflicts. So, from that, it's a very brief introduction, and you can very well talk with me on more things that you would like to know. But it is a very glimpse of the opportunities. I'm sure engineers here are also running businesses, and I'm sure there's a lot of investment to be done in Malaysia and in Singapore and other areas. But as we are starting from scratch, I mentioned the investment law enacted in 2012. Most of the things happening are very recent. We have only 30 months of experience in democracy or in such type of political reforms. And our country needs everything. And we are open to investment. The laws are very conducive to investors. And we are making sure such things that we review as the constraints will be managed. And also, we will be improving and upgrading in those areas that the foreign investor need, such as a stable legal system, a stable economic, stable financial systems. So with that, I would like to say thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Wu Wing Kai. Thank you for your informative paper. With that, I have great pleasure to invite Mr. David Ma to deliver his paper.
Thank you. Good morning, Major Dato' Engineer, ladies and gentlemen. When IEM invited me to speak, I was actually honored because engineering was one of my ambitions when I was in high school. Because the simple reason is that engineer and doctors were one of those two professions or careers where you have an extra title in your name other than Mr. So, but unfortunately, advanced physics was too advanced for me, and for biology, I concentrated too much on the last topic, which was never taught by any teachers, which was sex education. So, the next best thing was that I thought I chose a career in accounting for a simple reason. In accounting, the ratio of women students is more than 55%. And I can see, I'm glad I did not choose engineering because I can see there are less than 10% of women in this hall. But anyway, having said that, I'll give a brief background about myself. I'm a Malaysian. My background was mainly in auditing, and I ventured in tax when I was in Cambodia. I went to Cambodia about 5 years ago. I'm currently attached with the firm of DFDL, basically a regional legal firm, but we provided taxation service since the last 5 years because we noted that for any investments that come in, most of the investors want to know is not only just the law, but they want to know about their tax, how much money can they get out, or what are the issues with repatriating the money. So I'll try to give something that's useful in relation to engineering services in respect of the law and taxation. This is a bit background about my firm because we're running a short time. I would not want to do all this too long span on this, but you could just check our firm if you have the time by just going to www.dfdl.com. Our firm, we are also involved in region including Myanmar, and I was traveling in out Myanmar for the last 18 months, and whatever Mr. Wu Wing Kai has spoken, I can relate to that. So it's a bit crazy and very challenging now in Myanmar. I just came back last week. For the last 18 months I was in Myanmar. First time I went there, the same hotel room was $40 US. The next 6 months I went back, it became 80. And last month it became 120. So these are the prices we are looking at. And then yes, the figures that Mr. Wing Kai had mentioned, yes, that's true. That is the amount of investment going in, basically are the committed or those signed contract. But what the amount that actually gone in yet, nobody really knows. Because I haven't seen much development, especially in Yangon area, other than certain big hotel projects where the government actually auctioned off all the former land that occupied by government office where they moved to Nopidao. They use this land to build hotels, office building and so forth. Okay, so we are seeing those money there, but not the rest of it yet. Maybe everyone's waiting. There are so many laws that's unclear. Yes, it's correct. There's about the foreign investment law where you mentioned this tax break and that break, but whatever the foreigner can do, it will be subject. They have clauses like whatever foreigner can do or project investment can do will be subject to another law. But then we realize that other law has not been issued yet. So nobody knows, it's quite uncertain thing, but they are moving there very fast. All right, now a bit about Cambodia. I believe for Malaysians, you want to go out to any country, whether in our own country, going out to our neighbor's country, first thing we need to know about is the country we're going to. For example, Cambodia. You have to understand a bit of history about Cambodia. Long time ago, Cambodia was once a powerful kingdom. In fact, I understand that the word Malay, Malaysia, actually comes from a Cambodian word. Basically, comes from a word called Malay. It means land of the mountains. So Cambodia was a kingdom, was a very long time ago. I think about it started about 15th century, so it's about from the 9th century almost, way before Malacca and all that. So the bad thing about Cambodia is they suffered a lot during the Indo-China War. Almost everything was destroyed. The intelligentsia was almost killed or wiped out. After the Khmer Rouge left, or the Vietnamese came in, there were, I'm not sure about engineers, but I know about lawyers, basically about only left 5 lawyers in the country that were still alive. So I expect, I think by your laughter, I think you probably suggested that you have killed all the lawyers, right? But anyway, in respect of engineers, I'm not sure how many were right. There was no record because there were engineers working in Khmer Rouge, basically what they're doing, they're building dam irrigations just for the purpose of the rice and paddy farming. Now, because of this destruction of the infrastructure and the population, there are a lot of opportunities since after relative peace since 1997. Okay. There are claims of natural resources in the Gulf of Thailand. Basically, Chevron is involved in the exploration, but until today, Chevron have not able to extract anything because there were disputes overlapping area with Thailand. And then, of course, there are minerals, gemstones, and hydropower potential. The minerals are basically, a lot of them were mined already during the Khmer Rouge era because they need the gems to finance the weapons and the war. But there are still, there's good prospect of new find of iron ore and phosphate. And hydropower is not so much on the Mekong River in Cambodian side, because the river is just not so, the ground is like, the sea level is too low. Basically, Mekong River is very low. We call it something like the Netherlands of the Netherlands of Asia, because once it rains, a lot of areas flooded and it's not suitable for hydropower. But hydropower is mainly on the eastern and western side of the borders where the rivers with Vietnam and Thailand. Right. This is a bit about the GDP growth. The Malaysian and Cambodian business are increasing also year by year. This information I got it from the embassy of Malaysia in Phnom Penh. Okay. Now, what is interesting about Cambodia, since that so many things are destroyed and engineers, the infrastructure are not really there. So basically, they like their open free market system because they want to attract people to bring money. And then it's among the Recon region, the most open country, and now it's safe and stable. With the exception of the recent election, I think it's similar to Malaysia in some ways, where the opposition have won more than 51% of the votes, but less than 51% of the seats. So and then the army now, the current government is calling the army into town, but basically, honestly, I have not seen any tanks at all in the town. But so hopefully that they are able to form their Senate and Parliament soon, because now they're still at the deadlock after 3 to 4 weeks of negotiation, how many seats and who actually won the election. So that is something we hope we can solve soon. Basically, in engineering, there is this board of engineers, but they were only formed not too long ago. I think it's similar to Myanmar. I think Myanmar, the figure was 2011. I think the board of engineers was only less than 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, but unfortunately, I'm aware of Malaysians being registered as board engineers. Basically, board engineers require individuals to be registered, not the company. So they do accept registration, but enforcement of standards, that is something a bit grey at the moment. If the company that's doing engineering work, you are the only two ministry you need to register with, depending on your type of project, is related to construction, urban planning, and residential areas or many buildings. You have to go with the Ministry of Management, Land Management, Urban Planning and Construction. But if relating to public works, civil engineering, you have to go with the Ministry of Public Works and Transport. This Ministry, Public Works and Transport, they do post on their website what are the tenders that they are offering at the moment. So you could just click on the website and then you can see whether there's any tenders that's suitable for your company or for your company to invest or take up there. Some of the opportunities are here. Transportation, urban management, rural infrastructure, energy. And there's a rumor of a private initiative. Because in Cambodia, due to the lawlessness of the past 20 or 30 years, there's some, then there were about 2 or 3 local tycoons that set up their own petrol business in Cambodia. So, but the problem is the petrol in Cambodia all come from Siam port, and all these guys always have all these big tankers to distribute the petrol. So, what the latest rumor is, we heard one of the tycoon, he want to save costs and change the game plan. He want to build this pipeline. So he'll be the only one that has the pipeline direct from the port to the Phnom Penh city. But this is a rumor, but we are not able to confirm yet. The thing is, in Cambodia is due to the war. First thing, the government, they always tell everyone they have no money. So the thing is, for any project, you have to either rely on international aid, basically comes from the United Nations, or the World Bank, or the Asian Development Bank, or sometimes US aid or the Australian aid. Secondly, if those international banks don't have money, you have to come up with your own private funding. Alright? But the problem with domestic bank is, if you're thinking of getting loans through domestic bank, it's almost impossible for large projects due to the size limitation of the single customer limit. I think it's only about 12.5% of the bank capital. So, the equity of the project is very difficult for them to borrow. And in terms of infrastructure, the chance would be that, of course, a lack of skilled labor. Like they don't really have any. They have vocational school, but it's not really involved in big projects. Or even my wife is Cambodian actually, and she's also an accountant. Good thing is, she understands if I tell her that I have to work overtime office, she understands. But the bad thing is she just always tells me, make sure I'm not doing off-balance sheet audit of someone else. But in terms of that, what I want to say is my brother-in-law, they have a house, they got a house that just completed recently, and I noticed the standard of finishing is actually worse than what I find in even Malaysian low-cost housing. So this is a challenge there in terms of skilled labor. Cost and supply power, you have to be careful. One thing they do not have, they are not a natural oil producer. So the petrol prices, it always increase with the world global price, but it never comes down actually. I noticed that all the petrol stations, they will increase, but they don't reduce it. Then the other thing is the supply of electricity. Those days was very bad, but now it's not too bad. It's maybe we only have one power or 1 or 2 power outage in a month. This should be more interesting for engineers, or you can relate to. First of all, because of the destruction infrastructure and all, there actually not much standards and codes in Cambodia nowadays. For example, there's actually no fire safety code for tall buildings, or even for town buildings, there's no code at all, nothing. If any of you been to Phnom Penh, you can see that in any area, all the houses, even let's say a house, the 2 neighboring houses may be 2 stories, but they're not even the same height. Or even if there's tall, in fact, for the tall building, I understand the current fire engine in Phnom Penh, they can't reach more than, I don't know, I can't remember the exact figure, but I know that all the fire engines in Phnom Penh is not able to reach any of the current tall building at all. They're not able to reach the tallest of the building. The other thing is there's lacking enforcement or selective enforcement. The thing for Malaysian engineers is always careful is the words that's around in Cambodia is that every product or engineering or even like a pipeline or whatever products or even electrical wire that come from Malaysia, they always use the word Malaysia very expensive. Now the reason why we are expensive, I believe, is because we use a British system. Even our electrical wire, we have a 3 wiring. But in Cambodia, you're careful. In Cambodia, those guys, they only use 2 wires and there's no standard on that. So the thing is, this is a part of the legacy because they were under so many countries because of the war. So this is one of the challenges we face. Last year when I was in Malaysia, I was a speaking engagement where I met Dr. David. So one of the participants, later on he followed me back to Phnom Penh where he wanted to know about the building of a pipeline, and then we have one Malaysian company doing a hydro dam project there. So he wanted to supply the water pipes. But then when he reached there, he was very disappointed because he found out that in Cambodia they followed the French standard for that particular project. And they did not use quality material in terms of the construction part like what we do in Malaysia. So it's one of the challenges that we're very careful of when we go into any new country. But one thing good, I do not know whether it's good or bad, depends on your perception. Because like in this type of environment, if anything go wrong or anything, you'll get it done, but please do not quote me. That means as long as you got do it copy, it can jalan already. Right? This is the environment we're looking at. Okay. The company you can form is basically is either can incorporate a company or you can just in fact for engineers, I believe as an individual you can go there and provide your services as an employee or as an individual consultant. Okay, but there are legal considerations, but I will not delve into that. If you're interested, you could give me an email or we can talk about it later. So, I mentioned about engineering individuals only on the BEC. Okay. Other than that, if you want to know about how to minimize tax and get out of whether any labor registration, good thing about Cambodia, they do have an item called work permit, but it's quite easy to get. In fact, I got my work permit, and the thing is, one of the requirement of work permits actually I go for a blood test, but I dare not go to the blood test administered by the Ministry of Labour. They have a special clinic there to administer. When the first time I went, I was happy. I thought, just like Malaysia, they use a small needle gun and things like that. When I entered the room where they wanted to draw my blood for test, I saw that they were using the scalpel that I was using to do my biology class in high school to prick the finger of the people. The scalpel is a normal scalpel, dissecting scalpel that I used to dissect frog in high school. Well, when I saw that, I thought I don't want to do it. Then they say, okay, no problem. $5. I said, here you go. Yeah, then the next thing is the X-ray. Then I do not know. I saw the machine. I thought it was something come out of Chernobyl, Russia. So I told him I do not want to do the X-ray. How much is that? Then I said, oh, this one $12. I said, okay, tell you what. I got my assistant. Can you ask them for all the department how much they want? Then we realized it's only $60. I just said pay $60 and they gave me a clean health bill. And I got my work permit. So this is the environment we are dealing with in Cambodia. All right. So it's possible for you to go freelance or as a sole proprietor without under the radar of the law. But don't quote me on that. So this is a bit about tax conciliation. It's actually very expensive to incorporate company and do it in Cambodia because the tax regime, they actually practice two types of tax regime. A real regime is basically for all companies that are incorporated and for foreigners, and estimated regime is basically for locals. By way of estimate means the tax officer will come to you, have a talk with you, and estimate how much tax you think you should pay him, and then that is done. So I've seen cases where a tax officer go to the house of a Cambodian. He may have 3 Land Rover, 1 Audi, or even a Lamborghini. A tax officer go there and then they say, oh, I estimate the tax to be $100 a month. Oh, thank you very much. But when the tax officer go under a new regime and meets a foreigner and say, oh, you don't even have a car, but I believe that you are earning income from overseas, and because you're a resident, you have to pay me $1,000 tax a month. So it could happen. And so this is the environment that we are dealing with. So if you're in tax, there are ways, for companies that really need to follow law, and for example, you're listed, there are tax planning methods to reduce your tax exposure. The tax on individual salary is 20%, but it may appear to be lower than Malaysia, but I did my calculation. It's actually the amount of tax you pay is higher than Malaysia, because Malaysia, the government gives a lot of individual claims and relief, EPF, insurance, buying gold and all that. In Cambodia, there's no relief at all. Right? Even for wife relief, it's only a 75,000 Khmer, which come up to $20 a month. I think $20 a month for wife relief is definitely not enough. I do not know how they get the idea to come up with $20 per month for wife relief in Cambodia. Maybe for locals they might have 8 wives, that's why they come up to that amount, $20. There are investment incentives, but I will not go into detail, but basically investment incentives, they exempt you from minimum tax, and they also give you a 0 tax rate on the profit for 3 to 6 years. Now the trick in Cambodia is you do not assume that they say tax-free is tax-free. It is tax-free as long as you keep your money that you earn in Cambodia. So means the moment you take out your money as dividend, they hit you with 20% tax. And as a foreigner, you receive dividend, they hit another 40% tax, so it comes up to about 31.2%. So just have to be careful. Do not assume when you see the word tax-free, it's really tax-free like what we have in Malaysia. Okay, so this is one of the things that you really need to read between the lines or read behind the lines in going to any country. I can give you a slide of this. You can just contact me at my email at the end. I'm sorry I haven't given you this slide earlier because I was rushing to do was a research project.
Mr. Ma, are you prepared to continue again after I?
I can just finish in 1 minute. Is it okay? Basically, I finished reading. Okay, so the next thing is, these are the contexts that you could refer to for any system you want to go to Cambodia. Basically, Malaysian Embassy, or the Malaysian Business Council, or other Malaysian-owned business actually banks there. There are a lot of Malaysian-owned banks there. Public bank been there for 7 years or more. Right. So these are some of the known Malaysian companies that are operating in Cambodia. This information you can obtain on our website. And basically, this is my employer office, but I provided you with my personal email here. The reason is that I actually attended resignation from GFDL recently. Next week is actually my last day. I decided to take a break from work because I just got news that my mother was very sick, so I may intend to come back to Malaysia for at least 2 to 3 months and maybe consider my next career move after that. Right. So if you got any questions, you can just contact my email there and I can give you this slide. Alright, thank you very much.
Definitely we need you for a special session for those who want to go to Cambodia to do business. Agree with me, isn't it? Okay. And thank you again for accommodating our time constraint.